What does black even mean? Is Obama black?
Yes, I do think that like there can be conservatives that are totally valid in like us disagreeing with, but it wouldn't be on things like human rights. It wouldn't be on those baseline types of things. It would be on like, oh, what type of economic infrastructure policy are we going to do? Or how much are we going to spend on this particular policy?
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Are we checking and looking for waste? Right? Those types of things should be the concerns that conservatives are having. And my issue is a lot of these concerns y'all don't have when it comes to Donald Trump.
This issue for me is like a non-issue. So I can say Kamala Harris is not black, and I don't care. I'm not a psychopath. I've been tested. I'm not.
Okay. You did say that like you didn't vote for Trump for economic reasons. I'm pretty sure, right?
No, that wasn't the main one. That's for sure. Because I think both parties historically have sucked at controlling the deficit.
Okay. But like obviously Republicans are worse recently because of Trump, right?
Oh no, yesterday you agreed that Biden increased the deficit more than Trump. Remember that?
No, you agreed that that was actually Trump that did it more because it was based upon what he signed into law, right? You're just talking about things that happened.
See,
under
here
the
we go again.
Not things that they caused.
My question to you was, what actually happened in history? Did Biden increase the debt more, or did Trump increase the debt more?
Did
you look it up after we were done?
When you determine who raised or increased it more, you have to reference things they did to cause that, not just what happened under the administration. What you're doing,
but that wasn't my question.
What you're doing is a correlation causation fallacy. That's what you're attributing it to that administration without actually like isolating for what they would have caused.
Right, but there's I understand what you're saying.
Signed off on more debt-related spending, 8.4 trillion overall, 4.8 trillion non-COVID related. For the Biden-Harris administration, 4.3 trillion overall, 2.2 trillion non-COVID related. Again, from the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget.
The monthly Treasury reports show that over the 4 years Biden was president versus the 4 years Trump was president, there was more deficit spending under Biden than Trump. That's a fact.
Again, but you're just like again not acknowledging reality. This is like saying
I'm acknowledging facts, history.
Okay. If the day that Trump got into office, there was a lower rate of unemployment than the day he left office. The day he went into office, there were more jobs in the economy than the day.
Sure, he left office. And so I really don't like these types of conversations because you can find a metric that makes your guy look good, and I can find a metric that makes my guy look good, and then you can find metrics that make your guy look bad, and then the question is, like you said, correlation is not causation. So then a president, like for example, Biden could look really good on one metric, and then a guy like me could say, well, that's because of Trump. Or Obama could look really...
No, but that's why I referenced specifically like what they did, right? You're just referencing what happened under the administration. The reason why I gave you that specifically was that like the day he went into office versus the day he left it, there's a higher unemployment when he left versus when he was there in the first place, was to show you that just because the unemployment went up under his administration net, right, does not mean that it was caused.
Well, that's because of COVID.
So exactly. So you identify external causes. So similarly, you should be able to identify external causes when it comes to this scenario, right?
You would admit inflation went up under Biden, right?
I do.
Okay.
I don't think it was caused by him. Do you think that it was caused by Biden?
Partly, but I think it goes back to 30 years of. I think it goes back to 30 years of Federal Reserve money printing. But that's
okay. That's not related to the president, though. So, like, if we're talking about
that's not his fault. But I said partly.
Who caused more inflation, Trump or Biden?
So if you take the average inflation rate of Trump versus the average inflation rate over Biden, Biden loses.
No, that's not how you are going to be able to identify.
I said if you take the 4-year average, then Biden loses, and you agree with that. There's no chance you disagree with that because you're a smart guy and you know that's a fact. But now you can say that's because you could say, but Biden didn't cause that.
But you're not going to acknowledge that that's not an indicator of what was caused by the president. That's why I'm saying this. That's not a good indicator. That's all I.
But do you agree that the average inflation rate under Biden was higher than Trump? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then that's the only point I'm making.
Does that mean it was caused by him? No. So then you're doing again a correlation causation fallacy. So again, give me something that was caused by the administration that you can then associate to be like literally
the stimulus. I think both Trump and Biden were guilty of overstimulating the economy after COVID or during COVID.
Okay, so then
like the PPP loans, for example.
Okay, so for example, the spending is what causes inflation, correct?
Yeah, in that case, yes.
Trump again signed off on more debt-related spending. That's the most relevant factor to identifying who caused more inflation related to spending. Is going to be who had more debt-related spending.
Do you want to keep talking about this, or I got some questions on immigration?
You can ask me questions about immigration, but I think that's
This is a
pretty clear. I think that's a pretty clear factor that shows you that a lot of the economic issues you attribute to the Biden-Harris administration are actually applicable to Trump.
No, Parker, it is so difficult. Our economy is so complex. It's so difficult to say this president caused this and this president caused that. I totally get that a President Biden had issues to deal with because of President Trump, and President Trump had issues to deal with because of President Obama, and President Obama had issues to deal with because of George W. Bush. It goes on and on and on. And if you love your guy, you're going to say it's never my guy's fault. It's always the previous administration who is the enemy in the outright.
Pine Creek, that's how you're thinking, right? I'm not thinking that way. I look specifically at what they signed into law. How do we attribute it? Based on
right, but you're assuming that they had. You're assuming you can know that by signing into law, you know all the consequences of it and all the unintended consequences of it, and you don't.
You know how much the bill spends.
What you know what the bill's planning to spend.
Yeah, exactly. So you're gonna
and know you know that's a budget, and actual is often different than budget.
So then he's not good at estimating or making estimates. The economists around him that were in his administration were not good at estimating how much his spending bills were going to be. Right?
Do you agree that Biden's 4-year budget spending is higher than Trump's?
And by the way, 4-year budget spending, you're just talking about what was incurred under the administration, not what was signed into law by them.
Right, what was actually incurred.
Dude, Pine Creek, I've already told you multiple times. Just because it happens under the administration does not mean it's caused by the administration. You have to be.
I'm not talking about causing. I'm not asking about causing.
And why are you bringing up a point for culpability?
Because I want you to say out loud. I want you to say out loud to your audience. The Biden administration.
I say all these things.
Parker, take a breath. It's okay. I want you to say this. The Biden administration spent more than the Trump administration. What actually happened? The actual budget. That's all you have to say.
Over the spending incurred under each administration, the spending was higher under the Biden administration.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the debt-related spending was incurred based upon what they said.
Okay, fine. You conceded that. I'll concede you.
I like how he just doesn't want to acknowledge the point that I'm making that is the most relevant, because what you're talking about is it's dishonest the way that you're perpetuating it. I think you're doing this because you're a troll at this point. And it's actually really sad because you're not even trying to engage with the legitimate point that I'm describing here. That you're not relating to who actually has culpability for the matter. So when you say that, like, oh, the Biden-Harris administration spent more, you're not saying they did it themselves. You're just saying under the administration, because of spending that was signed into law by Trump, by the way, mostly, right? They had greater levels of nominal spending. Yes, of course. That would also be true for basically every administration, right? Comparative to the previous administrations, because we spend more given that we have more of a population. Or given that we get more revenue because there's a larger population. So there's just going to be higher levels of spending anyway, typically speaking, right? But you're not acknowledging the debt-related spending or where they sign into law themselves when you when you explain it that way. And I think you know that you're doing that dishonestly.
I want to go back to immigration. And my question for you is a hypothetical question, because I love hypotheticals. You got 2 people at the border, and you're in charge, Parker, of who gets in. Everything's the same between these 2 individuals. You can only let one individual in. Everything's the same between them, except one has $1 million cash in the bank. The other one has nothing. Who do you let in?
Everything's the same, but the difference in money. Who do you let in?
Yeah.
It depends on what your like concerns are. I don't really have any concerns. I would say.
No, I'm asking you, not me.
I'm indifferent.
You're forced. There's a gun to your head. You have to force to let one of the 2 in. Who do you let in?
I'm indifferent.
Why are you indifferent?
Because I think they're just as valuable to society.
You think a person who has 0 money is just as valuable as a person who has $1 million?
Yes.
To society?
Yes.
Okay, how about fiscally?
Economically, they might provide less value. Sure.
Okay, so remember let me do my hypothetical again. All else equal. So they both have value.
So then here's your point. They have every single same characteristic. They grew up in the same way. Everything about them is the exact same. The only difference is that one person has more money than the other person.
Right.
So when you're saying that they provide more to society, you're just saying that they have more money. That's it.
I'm asking you who
Parker, I'm asking you, who do you let in? Uh, I don't think that I would be like different. I would have a difference in opinion there.
But you just
I think I'd be
admitted
indifferent.
fiscally
You
that
could say,
one would have a benefit.
fiscally. Okay, I don't care.
You don't care.
I don't think that in each scenario, in order to accept someone into the country, they have to be providing the optimal level, the most possible level.
See, this is what I call feel sorry forism. The answer is it's a rhetorical question, because if all else is equal, and the only difference is the money part, and you admitted just a few minutes ago that the one person with $1 million would be a benefit fiscally.
Yeah, they would be. Yeah, but like I don't.
So
think
then that tips the scale. Why wouldn't you let in the?
It doesn't necessarily tip the scale to me, right? For
Why
who
not?
I would allow into the country, because I don't base who should be allowed into the country based on how much money they have.
How about
That's not a standard that's relevant towards who I'm going to allow into the country. I have a question. If you were going to let a kid have access to education, all else equal, right? A kid that has parents who make $40,000 a year, or a kid whose parents make $500,000 a year, who would you let in the school?
the question is, the parents have 500,000. One parent has 40,000. Which kid do I let in the school?
Yeah, all else equal.
All else equal. 500,000.
You let the kid with 500,000 into the school.
Yeah.
Wow, I think that's pretty insane, because here's my concern here. My concern here in this scenario would be that like the person whose parents have a lower income, or they've had access to less opportunities and resources. So I would clearly have a concern to like want to help them in that scenario, right? Because out of fairness, something that you brought up yesterday in our debate, fairness, right? It's important that in a society where it is the case that someone was given significantly less, they should be given greater levels of opportunities to account for that. Right?
Okay,
We don't care about that type of fairness in our society.
Okay, now, but you notice how quickly I answered your hypothetical? You notice I didn't say I'm indifferent. You notice I didn't say.
Wait, you could say you're indifferent to hypotheticals. It's not something that's.
But I'm pointing out the obvious. I'm pointing out what I didn't do and what you did.
What's wrong with the way that I responded?
Because in this hypothetical, you were forced to choose, and you said I'm not going to choose, and you still haven't chosen.
If I say I'm indifferent, that's totally fine. Like if I ask you a question, would you rather save your mom or your mom? You'd be indifferent, correct?
Right, but that's the same answer.
Okay, obviously. You gave
Okay, now Parker, ask me your hypothetical again.
For allowing who in the country, you gave me the same thing, because I don't take into account how much
I don't think I understood your question. Ask me your hypothetical again.
Okay. Would you rather accept a kid into access to higher education, right? Say you're a college, right? You have all else equal, one kid whose parents had $40,000 in income a year, and another kid whose parents had $500,000 in income a year.
I'm indifferent.
You're indifferent?
Yeah.
That would be a totally fair way to respond, right?
Yeah, now it would be. Yep.
It would be.
What do you think is the main difference between the left and right? If you were to like, if an alien came from another planet and said, what is this Democrat Republican thing? What is the left and right? But you could only bullet point, they got like 30 seconds. What is the core fundamental difference?
I'd probably refer to how much you think society should offer for people, or like what's the baseline
empathy
for people.
Yeah, who said the empathy? What's his name?
I did.
Matt, I agree with you. I think that is the key.
So are you just saying that you have a lack of empathy?
No, my empathy is probably average. My compassion is like in the bottom 10%. I can understand intellectually why people feel the way they feel, why they do the things they do, but compassion-wise, I'm probably like 9 out of 10 people would beat me on compassion. I own that. I admit that. But I think Matthew,
that's not like a good trait to have, is a lack of compassion.
No, I mean that's one of the traits of a psychopath. I'm just saying, like I'm being honest with you. Like, yeah, I'm glad that you're admitting it, but like
I think it's.
I'm not a psychopath. I've been tested. I'm not.
Okay.
There's going to be times where your compassion will blind you, and there's going to be times where my lack of compassion is going to blind me. And so we actually can work together just like a husband and wife can work together and complement each other to build a better society.
Okay, look, I honestly don't think Parker or I are advocating that there should be no conservatives in this world, right? We're advocating that certain belief systems and certain things, right, I think should be less in society. I think at the current moment, we are in a situation where compassion is at such a low level, particularly for the most vulnerable, just in society, that's a problem, and that the left.
Yeah, but that's just the pendulum swinging back and forth. You'll always see that.
I'm not content with the pendulum swinging so far back and forth.
Right, because of your personality type.
Well, sure, but like I have a viewpoint that I think is correct, and I want there to be a certain level of compassion in this world, and I don't want it to swing one way and the other. And I don't think personally in the United States that liberals are like that type of pathological type of compassion, because we have conservative type of Democrats still in the party who
I agree.
who like do push back.
Like what's funny is classical liberals and conservatives like myself, we're very much alike.
Okay,
it's the progressives that cause the friction. But anyhow, Parker.
No, I don't think so. So but when it comes to this, I do think that like there can be conservatives that are totally valid in like us disagreeing with, but it wouldn't be on things like human rights. It wouldn't be on those baseline types of things. It would be on like, oh, what type of economic infrastructure policy are we going to do? Or how much are we going to spend on this particular policy?
Yeah, I agree.
Are we checking and looking for waste? Right? Those types of things should be the concerns that conservatives are having. And my issue is a lot of these concerns y'all don't have when it comes to Donald Trump. Like if you actually held that, you would be against Donald Trump here.
Okay. Should I tell you the problems I have with Donald Trump?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let me say this before, and you're going to have to give me more than the 20 seconds, because I'm going to list a bunch of things I don't like about Donald Trump. But I still voted for him, and I'm still overall happy with his performance. I disagree with the pardons he did. There's many of the pardons. Some I would have been okay with commuting, but that was one. I totally disagree with having McMahon as the Secretary of Education. I actually disagree with his rhetoric on Canada being the 51st state. I think that rhetoric is very harmful. I disagree with his tariff policy as far as doing it broadband and not targeted. I think tariffs can be used as a manipulation of certain industries, but he's just doing broadband. But although he's been pulling it back, and with tariffs again, what I hate what he's done is he's caused uncertainty in the markets, because now business leaders cannot plan for their supply chains. What else? His rhetoric in general, my wife of 30 some years just hates when he talks, and I totally get it. It doesn't bother my personality type, but his rhetoric in general is very offensive and is not helpful. He's not presidential. I do not want my son to grow up to be like him in so many ways. Let's get back to policies. What other policies?
Okay. These a lot of these reasons are some of the reasons why you should be so like, you should think it's so important to keep someone like that out of the position of presidency. I think character is almost more important than a lot of those other issues and concerns that you've brought up as to why you think that Donald Trump is better.
Right, but you have to admit that's your opinion, right?
Of course, I gave you my opinion.
Okay, and we talked about the last live stream why I can like let me relate to you and your viewers listening here.
But like my question, me bringing that up, is like, what are your thoughts about my opinion? That's essentially what I was asking you there.
I'm indifferent, because people have been telling me, well, you shouldn't vote for him or support him because of these things, and I just disagree. But and let me explain why I disagree.
So I was asking you for.
There are many things that people, when they voted for Biden back in 2015, was it 2015, 2016, 2017?
Biden?
Yeah, the Biden, Trump. Yeah,
Biden v. Trump is 2020.
Well, actually, yeah, let's go to 2020. When Biden won in 2020, and he did win, that's another thing I don't like about Trump, that he won't admit that. But anyhow, there are many things that Biden supporters.
That's a long list, bro.
I know. There are many things that people don't like about Biden, but they still voted for him. There's many progressives who thought he is too centrist. Biden was too centrist.
We are some
Yes,
of them.
yes. So
Right,
Parker,
but you're
I'm
not.
I'm preaching to
I
the choir
understand.
here.
I
Well, no,
understand. But
I don't
like,
think. Oh, sorry, Parker. Sorry,
but
sorry.
I was gonna say like we don't have stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but
we don't have that
like I
extent of
can
things.
list some things that like I
No,
don't like about Joe Biden, but they're not like a laundry list of things. Like it's not like that. You know, yes, I
well,
disagree with them, but like
he
not
increased
that
oil
much.
production, and then he's after saying he cares about the environment.
That's
Yes,
an example of
okay.
one. Yeah.
While
You gave
while
a
at the same
whole
time,
list. You gave like
no,
a
hold on.
grocery
Yeah,
list.
he did that while also strengthening other types of laws and protection for the environment. So like it's a mixed bag, right? Like that's one thing, but I have to balance that with his actual like stuff that he did that's like very good.
But Parker and Matt, you guys could give me a laundry list on Biden, can't you? That you don't like?
We could probably give you 8 to 10 things. Yeah.
Kidding, that's what I did. So
But like we can keep you to get going. We can keep you going. There's more than 8 to 10 for you. I promise
but
you.
this is just
point,
like
no,
this
listen,
is like
no,
recess
you're not listening,
theatrics.
you're not listening. The point I want you to address here is that when we are showing you this, every single thing you bring up about someone like Joe Biden is going to be worse with someone like Donald Trump. Every single concern you bring up, every single thing in your laundry list, right? If you're going to bring up issues with, right, those things, you're not going to be able to bring up.
But these are not factual
that
things.
many
These
reasons.
are opinions.
You're not
whether
gonna be
something's better or worse is opinion. Always will be.
I understand.
Well, unless you're talking about math, and like 4 is higher
I'm
than
comparing
3.
the amount of reasons that you have, right? I'm saying you will not be able to provide the same amount of reasons, right, as to why you are against someone like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
Again, you can have, let's say, 10 reasons to be against someone, but you can value one reason. Like this even applies to Bernie Sanders.
More than those. Okay, then give me those reasons.
I'm just making we're talking about the big picture here, Parker. We're up in the sky and we're looking down on politics. Remember, this whole conversation was started by what do you think is the fundamental difference between the left and the right? And I'm making the claim that we need each other. And I'm also making the claim that whenever you vote for someone.
Oh no, Pine Creek. Did you post something on X denying that Kamala Harris is black?
No.
So you didn't post a meme joking about that?
That she's not black?
Yeah.
A meme? Oh, someone in your chat is saying I posted a meme? Bring it up. I don't know.
I mean, it's someone, it's Sid. So like I know Sid. Like that's why I was like I'm genuinely concerned. If it's not true, you can just clarify that it's not true, right? And clarify that you don't agree with that. And be like,
I don't recall ever saying Kamala Harris is not black. She has darker skin shade, but the thing is, what does black even mean? Is Obama black?
Yes. Like,
as far as I'm concerned, yeah.
Wait, yeah. Do you think that Kamala Harris is black?
I think she's East Indian and she's half black, half African American, half East Indian. So is that black?
So is she black? Wait, why are you asking me if that's black? Yeah.
Well, so Parker, I married a woman of Trinidadian descent, so my kids have darker skin shades, and so we talk about this often because people on the street, some say, or when they talk to their friends, whatever, and they say you're black, and they come home, I'm black. So this issue for me is like a non-issue. So I can say Kamala Harris is not black, and I don't care if Kamala Harris is not black, and I can say Barack Obama is not black, and then you can ask me, what do you mean by black? Well, is it like the is it Family Guy? That list of at what shade do you become black, or is it about culture? Not all black people are African American, but most African Americans are black. You understand anything I just said?
So no, I just honestly think it's like pretty fucking insane, right? That like your response to just answering the question, is Kamala Harris black? You have to essentially.
I'm indifferent, Parker. I'm going to pull your move. I'm indifferent. How's that?
Okay, well, I don't think it's okay to be indifferent on like whether or not someone's black when they are black, to dismiss them. Okay, I think that's pretty up. Yeah, and that's like reason I would kick you from my stream. He's super pro free speech, so he's fine with that.